Hey everybody! Let's look at the fascinating world of viruses today. Viruses get a very bad reputation for making us sick, but if you think about it from an evolutionary point of view, they're like anything else on Earth, just trying to survive. Viruses are in the gray area between living and non living things. All living things have cells, which viruses don't, making them non living. But they can reproduce with the help of other living things, such as humans and even bacteria, making them living. But then again, they can't eat or excrete, which means they're non living, right? Most scientists do agree they are non living, but are really close to being called living things. Because they depend on others, we also call them non living parasites. All viruses need to have at least two parts to survive: some form of genetic material like DNA or RNA that propagates information, and a protein cover. Some viruses can also have another layer of fat protecting them. Even with such simple components, viruses come in a variety of shapes and sizes. HIV, which causes the deadly AIDS, and adenovirus that causes the common cold are both spherical. The Ebola virus looks like a tiny snake, and a bacteriophage, which is a virus that infects bacteria, looks like an alien war machine. Now, we said viruses need a host to reproduce. But how do they do that? Imagine this virus is infecting a cell. Oh, the virus is much smaller than a cell, but let's make it big so we can actually see things. It injects its DNA or RNA into the cell, which gets tricked into helping it reproduce. The cell uses all of its machinery to help create copies of the DNA or RNA. Once the cell makes copies, the virus borrows protein and fat from the cell and starts multiplying. This starts making a cell sicker, and eventually the viruses burst through the cell, killing it and going on to infect other cells. So, how do viruses mutate? Our body has several checks in place to make sure it copies DNA correctly. This is because our cells are made of DNA themselves and they copy millions of DNA sequences daily to ensure we function well and make new cells. So, if the genetic material in a virus is made of DNA, it doesn't change or mutate much. Adenoviruses that cause common colds is a DNA virus. On the other hand, if the virus is made of RNA, our body isn't as great as copying it very well. This leads to a lot of changes or mutations. Most of these mutations do not cause any changes to the viral function, but sometimes it can cause another strain. A good example of an RNA virus is the one for influenza, which causes the flu. It mutates and makes multiple strains every year, which is why scientists need to keep updating the vaccine and we need a new shot every year. These mutations are another reason why viruses jump from one species to another. Generally, viruses love to stay with their host. They build a relationship where the host, say a bat, learns to live with it. The virus needs their host to survive because their own survival depends on it. So, they generally don't like to kill their host and cause only minor symptoms. An example of this is the cold-causing adenovirus. We get sick, but not that sick. But sometimes, because of unusual interactions between species, like humans hunting or eating wildlife, or even climate change, which stresses both our environment and all of our wildlife, these viruses can mutate, and one of these mutations makes them jump and survive in another species. Sometimes they infect the new species but can't attach to them well, so they disappear. Other times, they mutate again in the new species to become more dangerous and start spreading. Limiting close contact between multiple species, respecting the space of wildlife, and leaving their environment unchanged will reduce the chances of viruses jumping between species. Now finally, let's think of how viruses are named. It's based on their genetic structure. For example, the coronavirus causing the 2020 pandemic is called the SARS-CoV-2 virus. It causes severe acute respiratory syndrome, is genetically similar to other coronaviruses, specifically the one that caused the SARS outbreak in 2003. The disease it caused has been named COVID-19, coronavirus disease, which was started in 2019. Another example of a name is the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. It causes Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, or AIDS. Now that was a lot to take in for one video, and there's so much more to learn about these tiny little almost living things. Do you have any more questions? You know how to reach me. This is Rukmini at Ask Me Anything About. See you next time.